Welcome to my living room. Today I want to talk about bioregionalism, which is a concept that looks at how cultural practices such as economy, spirituality, ways of dressing, etc. is influenced by a landscape. So what does this have to do with canoeing? The reality is, what better way to learn about ourselves, our past and our future than by adopting those localized cultural practices as a way in which to discover and explore. That's exactly what a canoe does. See, the canoe really was originated in landscapes that had a diverse array of water, lots of lakes, lots of ponds, big rivers, little rivers, etc. So the landscapes that best exhibit those characteristics are in northeastern Canada, down into the Great Lakes, and over to the northeast where we are today. So native peoples that were in those areas utilized dugout and birch bark canoes for everyday activities, hunting, fishing, trade, socializing. After the Europeans showed up on the scene, the fur traders of the early United States, the French Canadians specifically, began branching out into more rural areas like Vermont, New Hampshire, in search of Castor canadensis, or the beaver. Here's a beaver skull. And here's a beaver hide. The appetite for fur was absolutely enormous in England, where they no longer had fur-bearing species and where those with means utilized fur for warmth and style. What ended up transpiring was a massive fur trade, which still utilized birch bark canoes as well as wood and canvas canoes. Was an industry dominated by the Hudson Bay Company, this being a Hudson Bay blanket. The Hudson Bay Company was a massive, essentially a corporation that piloted trade routes in order to access fur all across the Northeast and into the northern Midwest. So recognizing that the canoe is specifically engineered through hundreds, if not thousands of years to best personify the needs of that diversified water landscape, recognizes that it is truly a superior vessel for travel in these environments. So that would not be unlike the sea kayak in areas of the coastal subboreal areas where Inuit were living, Greenland, Alaska, where the sea kayak is the vessel of choice. Again, that is born out of that landscape. So today, the canoe is something that became very popular in the early United States, here in the Northeast, Great Lakes, Canada, but also experienced a boom in the 1960s and 70s when there was a general recreational boom all across the United States. Recently, although canoeing hasn't really shrunk in popularity, we've seen more of an emphasis on recreational kayaks. And honestly, I've got no problem with recreational kayaks. I was an expeditionary sea kayak guide, but in this landscape, the canoe is far away superior because it connects me to the past, as well as it is a skill that is learned throughout a lifetime. There's been a marketing push to sell individual kayaks, which albeit are easier to use and easier to transport. And that's because just about everybody's got a canoe in rural areas up on sawhorses in the backyard. So it's hard to sell a product when everybody already has it. In fact, a lot of the famous canoe manufacturers started in the New England and Great Lakes region. The truth of the matter is, it can take a lifetime to learn how to paddle a canoe, pack a canoe, and utilize it in the wilderness. And it is superior at doing so. Whereas I can teach you how to paddle a kayak, a recreational kayak, in about 15 minutes, and you'll be as good as you ever will be with that kayak. That's not to say that a specified kayak like a whitewater kayak or a sea kayak is not good at what it does. It's exceptional. It's just the canoe is more diversified. It's steeped in thousands of years of technology. It can handle bigger loads, and it is adapted to those diversified waters, lakes, big rivers, small rivers, fast water, slow water. So I think that a reverence for the canoe needs to first start in that bioregional understanding. From there, we can understand the history of where the canoe came from and then adapt that to modern times.